Now, remembering those tragically murdered, a ceremony about to commence in Dothan will honor the lives of nearly 400 victims. News 4's Ken Curtis is live at the Wiregrass Angel House with a man who lost his daughter. Ken?
And we'll be meeting that man in just a moment. But Kinsley, you talked about nearly 400 crosses. There's actually 371 crosses out here, 23 of those representing children who became the victims of needless murders. I want to bring in right now, we're going to show you some video of the crosses, give you several perspectives. I want to bring in Gary Corbett. His daughter, Brittany Corbett, died, if my memory is right, in February of 2022. So you come to the Angel House, to this remembrance ceremony. What goes through your mind, and tell us a little bit about the daughter and how your daughter and how we'll honor her tonight.
Yes, sir. It's just wonderful that the Angel House do this. And Brittany, she was a very athletic girl in high school. She played basketball. She was friends with a whole lot of people, and it was just tragic how things happen, you know. But I wish I can go back and take that day back, but unfortunately, we can't do that.
And we understand, talking about the Angel House, it is a long process through the court system. They are by your side the entire time. How comforting is that for you?
That's very comforting. You know, you got support from the community, and nice people like Miss Katie, she's always there. Miss Bundy, she used to be there, but she doesn't work here anymore. But I really appreciate that, you know, and it's very supportive.
Tell me about where we are in the process, and do you see a light at the end of the road to put a conclusion, as they say, serve justice in this case?
Well, it's going to be a very long process because we got so many victims, and we're just going to take it one day at a time and stay prayed up.
And tonight, certainly an indication that your daughter is remembered. She will be honored, as will the other 372 people who have been murdered in Southeast Alabama.
Yes, sir. You know, I'm very thankful for that.
And we're very thankful for your time. Gary Corbett, he lost his 19-year-old daughter, Brittany, back in February of 2022. I actually remember that night because we were having an Angel House banquet on the night that tragedy happened in Newville, just the other side of Headland in Henry County. Now I'm on West Main Street. By the way, this is an open event. Anybody that wants to come can come and be part of this ceremony that's going to start at 5:30 this afternoon. I'm live at the Wiregrass Angel House in Dothan. Ken Curtis, your hometown news leader.
Ken Curtis, thank you. The ceremony will be streamed live on our website. That's WTVY.com.